Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting Stoneridge Connect session, how Copilot is changing the way we work in M365. I'm looking forward to diving a little bit more in detail around this today as we take a look at how organizations are using M365 to really accelerate adoption inside of their organization. Just as a quick note, my name is Scott Frappier. I will be your presenter for today. I have over 25 years of experience in the business system space, along with a lot of deep experience around integration and any of the technologies that really support business process enablement when interacting with a business system. So obviously, AI is a very large component of that, and that's been a very key focus over the last few years here as we've gone through and then adopted and used some of these advanced AI capabilities, not only internally at Stoneridge, but at some of our customer sites. Today, I'm here to give you as much of that information as possible so that you can make an educated decision as you look at becoming the new concept of a frontier farm inside of your organization. With that, let's go ahead and talk about kind of where we are to really start here to level set. When we think about our organizations and what we typically interact with inside of the M365 stack, there's a lot of different types of products that we're trying to access information around in order to get the result that's needed. We may be, for example, interacting in Outlook, but then in some situations, chatting on Teams to get information. We may have this in SharePoint, for example, or OneDrive where we need to access that information. And we use then Dynamics to basically go through and then manage some of those more critical business processes, such as accounts receivable and accounts payable. And you know what? We may even have, for example, other non Microsoft products that we use to tackle other business scenarios. And if you think about this, the effort in order to know and understand and get the information across all these different types of applications creates a fragmentation issue inside of your organization and really can reduce efficiency. So, what do we do in order to tackle this? How do we allow people to interact basically with the applications that they love and need, but at the same time, then assist them in becoming more efficient and more capable in their process to increase that efficiency and really increase that satisfaction, not only by the employee, but also by the customers that you interact with? That is where we have the concept of what we call a frontier firm. Now, don't let the marketing hype overdo the word frontier. It's not like we're going to the wild, wild west. What we are saying is we're saying that in order for you as an organization to really keep up with the rapid rate of change that is occurring inside of the business system space, one of the things that you need to start concepting is basically using AI to really support your business processes. And that journey to become a frontier firm isn't just black and white. It's not something that all of a sudden one day you're going to flip on and then magically it's going to work. Instead, it is a process. It is an iterative process that you typically go through to really then enable your business. Now, how do we do that? Like, what would we classify a frontier firm? And some of the patterns that we see are pretty common, and you might be in one of these buckets. Pattern one, for example, is using people that then interact with assistants at some level. Number two for a pattern is the human agent teams, where we have a human that is directing agents in order to get work done. And then pattern three is human led, not human first. Instead, it's human led and agent operated to really generate the content around what you need to do in order to get work done. These patterns I start with at the very beginning here because they define then how you would typically interact then with the Microsoft 365 ecosystem in order to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. So once again, when we start designing around this, what we start to think through as leaders is the fact that we are going to have these agent teams eventually that we are going to be interacting with to get information for our employees, to basically draft emails, and to automate even the clicks that end users do right now in order to accomplish their job. Now, one of the things that's really kind of unique about this is really the distillation of where the knowledge is inside of your organization that you need in order to really get to that next level. Now, in the past, for example, low code was really something that was pushing the envelope, so to speak, where we introduced these concepts of what we call citizen developers and pro developers as the C sharp, C, maybe they even do assembly language at some level, right? But if you think about it, the capabilities of what these individuals can do far exceeded what a citizen developer could do because of the technical capabilities that pro dev really introduced with that. And the low code tools couldn't keep up with obviously the pro dev perspective of this because they are designed obviously to not have as many capabilities in order to avoid confusion. Now, moving forward, though, we're starting to get into this reality where we basically have agents, for example, or AI, that can take natural language and create things that are just as good as Procode. Why is that so important? Well, it's pretty simple. When we think about, for example, the process knowledge between ProDev, which is high tech expertise, I know what overloads are and I know how to basically code anything, to the people that run the business, the process expertise, that disproportionate amount of knowledge and capability is a really big factor inside of AI enablement. And what I mean by that is when we think about M365, what we are trying to do is we're trying to really find that balance, but more focus, obviously, on process expertise compared to where we were in the past. And so when we think about then what Copilot does, this is where then we're going to get a real good direction in terms of what we are tackling in those capabilities. And what we're saying is that we need to upgrade every process. We need to empower every expert, and we need to accelerate every developer. And a developer is no longer someone that just writes code. It's someone that basically can also go through and then create additional content around that. So, what does it take to get to this level? What does it take to be able to use M365 to really drive your business forward? And really, you have to understand the reality and the ambition of your teams. The reality, more specifically, around where are we at in AI enablement and what can we do in M365 now to make my team more efficient? We need to give access to AI. We need to democratize it. This word has been overused, but I will say that I firmly agree that the fact of the matter is that people don't know what AI can do until they start interacting with it. And we have to create also a culture of constant iteration. And this is a really important concept. We do not just stop after we do one thing, instead we do more. This is an example I love to give is the Artemis rockets. Artemis 1, we launched a rocket. Artemis 2, we launched a rocket and circled the moon. Artemis 3, we're going to launch multiple rockets. We're going to test refueling. We're going to test 2 landing vehicles, right? So what's happening is that there's an iterative engineering approach to really tackle these needs. The 3 components that you are going to need to understand inside of your organization to really focus on the M365 story is Copilot, apps, and agents. And with those, we have the management capability of them to be able to ensure that we can see the apps, automation, data, and agents that we interact with. We've got governed policies, for example, around apps and teams and environments, and we're able to create enterprise-grade agents that conform to our tenant security and compliance. These 3 components are really everything that Microsoft has built on top of Copilot enablement inside of your organization and are really what we're going to be looking at here today in some more detail. So with this, let's go ahead and talk about how M365 really goes through and enables with Copilot apps and agents to address these needs inside of your organization. Now, the first concept that we typically introduce here is the concept that in M365, AI is the new UI. It is something that's really one of those cornerstone pillars in terms of the design of these different types of applications. And really, what's happening here is that AI is transforming that role of technology from tools that you use to just click on to get a job done to being creative with an assistant that can recommend, for example, different changes to an RFP. We're taking the data that we've been inputting so diligently and generating output that we can generate narratives around and understanding around. We have commands that now provide, for example, human in the loop conditions where AI agents can gather that information ahead of time. And we don't need to use specialized language anymore. We can use natural language to really direct what we want to accomplish as part of that process. Now, AI is the new UI is one of the biggest shifts that end users experience when looking at M365 adoption and enablement. The concept, for example, of you being able to work where you want to work is just really foreign, or it sounds too good to be true. I love Outlook. I love Teams. I don't want to go into Business Central to go create a customer. Well, now technically we can easily do that. We can make it so you can stay in Outlook to create a customer by sending an email to an agent because agents can interact with Teams, with SharePoint, with Outlook. They can be exposed in many different areas. And it really then allows for that enhanced productivity and scalability inside of your organization. Now, kind of continuing here just a little bit more, if we look at, for example, the next stage here of what concepts are really being introduced with this new type of UI, what we start understanding is that, for example, work can be just started by sending an email to an agent, a trigger, as we call it. And this is a really important concept because maybe it's a trigger that happens inside of a business system, meaning maybe it's all my orders that are one day late that I send an email out that gathers the information as to why it's late and then sends a customer update. So these concepts where we can then have it interact with that customer or end user in plain question interaction or plain text interactions with no buttons, no clicks, and just plain text and voice interactions really shifts how we then obviously interact with AI inside of our organizations. Now, how is AI though impacting work? Scott, you've talked about, for example, all the great capabilities M365, how I need to change my mindset to be more iterative or focus on agents. But you know what? Like, what can we do right now? And it's just kind of astounding talking about this now compared to me talking about it 2 years from now. The first things first, like we go through the app stack, right? When we talk about it inside of Outlook, how do I see people using it? Well, they're using it to summarize and generate emails and content. A really funny joke here. I know one leader was talking with me. He said, "You know what, Scott? This is great. I can have it generate the content that's needed, and then I send it to somebody, and then they just summarize what I just generated for them, right?" So the interesting thing about this, though, is that how you use a tool can make it more effective or more efficient. For example, I typically still type all my emails, but what I then do is I use Copilot to go through and clarify or add points or ask, is this confusing or is it in the right tone, to make sure that I have a better quality experience in terms of what that communication is going to be. Am I too wordy? Am I using too many informalities inside of here? Does it sound like I'm argumentative, right? You can use these tools inside of Outlook to go beyond just the generation of content to create better quality based responses. In Teams, for example, we have the ability to publish agents. An HR policy agent is the #1 agent that I've seen inside of Teams that looks at, for example, your company handbook and gives you information that you can interact with. And we've demoed that in the past as well. In M365 and in Windows, we have chat experiences with sidebars and also with Co-work to automate, for example, scheduled tasks. And we're going to take a quick look at that as well. And in Dynamics, we're getting agents that now can do purchasing. They can financially reconcile your tax ledger or general ledger or accounts payable ledger. We have sales order processing and quotes where we can get, for example, customers to look up pricing details that are related to it. And if you haven't heard of these features, they're all becoming native, and they're also then becoming tailored to customers' needs based on the customization needs that they have then for these given agents. So that's a really high level of work that's tackled, but what else? Well, let's just go through a bunch of other scenarios. We can generate marketing details for products. We can create PowerPoint slides. And I will tell you, if you used GPT-4 2 years ago to build slides and you use now the AI enablement capabilities to create PowerPoint slides, it's a world of a difference. I had, for example, an agent build me out a PowerPoint that had a Gantt chart that aligned to the timeline that we built for a response. And it was one of the best slides that I had seen generated by AI. It was absolutely phenomenal. You can add new content to a Word document. You can research new concepts or ideas and even then pull information, for example, from your actual OneDrive to include that. You can clean up your inbox and calendar. You can find information in your tenant. Did that person send it to me in a chat or was it in an email? You can summarize meetings and identify action items. You can include RFP details and research them and provide feedback on them, and you can ideate on a topic. And these are just little ones that we use every single day. So with that, let's go ahead and show that. What does that mean, Scott, when you're talking about some of these capabilities? And what I would love to do is just show you, for example, Microsoft Co-work that addresses some of these particular needs. So Co-work is one of the advancements inside of Copilot that is really what people have been telling me was what Copilot should have been from the very beginning. Let's take a look at why people are so excited about this. So in your tenant, you should have, for example, Co-work. And when I click on Co-work and I'm actually logged into, for example, my particular scenario or my particular environment, if we go ahead and then just go ahead and load up Co-work in the background here, I'm going to log in with my tenant details that are inside of here. And as you can see, we're having some fun with this, it looks like. So we'll go ahead and quickly log in here. It's not a demo until something's not working, right? So we'll do the passkey for it. And what we should be able to do here is basically go through and then sign in with my login details. And from there, we should now be grounded in the Stoneridge software tenant. So I'm actually using this inside of our production environment. So as you can see here, what do I want to tackle next? So instead of now having a chat experience that doesn't have, for example, work that is identified and aligned, what I can do is I can use Co-work as an example to go through and then organize my inbox. And as an example here, when I click on that organize my inbox, what it does is it actually goes out into Outlook. It identifies all my spam. It identifies all my messages that may need to then be removed as spam or archived if not, and then all my meetings, for example, and then understand what's urgent and what's not urgent. But what Co-work allows me to do, as you can see here in the background as it's building it out, is basically then use the agent as an assistant to get my job done inside of M365. And what's really cool about this is that I can leave and let it do its work. As you can see, it's in progress here, so that way I can do other tasks. For example, maybe I have a scheduled task inside of here every day at 8 a.m. that needs to generate my morning email schedule. And you're going to see here that it will actually go through and then generate that particular scheduled task inside of here. So that way I have a morning email digest every single morning that I'm interacting with. Other examples around this, if I just go ahead and share, for example, I had a meeting or a discussion regarding a prospect that I'm interacting with. Well, with that prospect, I said, give me more information as to what's going on here and the timeline, because I'm jumping on a call potentially with that particular prospect. And you can see here that it gives me a detailed timeline of all interactions that we have had basically with that potential prospect as we've been navigating this. So once again, Co-work exposes these great concepts and ideas and capabilities to really automate your business even further. And you can see as I go back now to my last emails, it's going to make all these recommendations for me and says, can I start with one for all of what we look at here as spam? Yes, please go ahead. Boom. My inbox now this morning will be cleaned up after I've done this video for you. I'll know that the emails that are inside of there now are ones that I should be paying attention to. So this is just a quick example basically of what you can do in M365 with the introduction of Co-work to tackle some of those needs inside of your organization. Now, when you see that, you're probably like, well, Scott, how do we manage this change? That's a lot. Like what you just showed there allows for now agents to access basically any information inside of your tenant, generate content, send emails, and interact with it at an even deeper level. That is why we have this whole security, privacy, and compliance with the use of, for example, the Copilot dashboard, the Admin Center, and also the Power Platform Admin Center to help you manage basically the rollout and capabilities of these particular agents, and as well as the adoption related to them as well. So for example, in the Power Platform Admin Center, we can set, for example, what's allowed, what connectors, what actions are allowed by these particular agents. We can limit sharing or co-authoring of those particular agents. We can disable publishing in certain channels. So that way all of a sudden we don't have a bunch of agents that people are creating that are now going to HR that we have no idea what those particular agents are, for example. And what we also have the ability to do is also define what we call pipelines to certify agents for production and broader sharing so we can put the governance in place to really drive it. Now, beyond that, we also have, for example, the Copilot dashboard, where we can understand, for example, the licensing-based concepts that are inside of here. We can analyze the employee sentiment of Copilot interactions. We can understand the trends of adoption of what's happening inside of these particular Copilot agents. So it's a really powerful concept then paired with the tenant level security, but also then with the adoption level type capabilities in your organization to really understand where it's impactful. And then finally, we have the ability to use advanced Copilot reporting in Viva Insights to see your adoption rate, to understand, for example, the impact of the number of users and the amount of hours that are being summarized for meetings, for example. But it allows basically for your data to basically be pulled into Viva Insights to then interact with it to really drive, for example, some of those metrics that you're going to need inside of your organization. So let's just take a really quick look at some of these. So just as an example, this is what we call Agent 365, where we have all the different agents and the registry of those agents and how many active users and how often agents are being run. Now this is in my pre-sales tenant because I've enabled this basically, but what I'm able to do is I'm able to go through and then see, for example, the different types of agents that I may be interacting with inside of here. So once again, because I've got multiple different types of screens that are open here, we've got to wait for this to basically go through and then reload, And what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can sign in with a different login. While that's going, let's take a look just really quickly at Viva Insights inside of here. So the Copilot dashboard inside of our Viva Insights on how many licenses are assigned, for example, the momentum, what outstanding issues or requests for licenses are out there, right? So this gives another example then of really the Viva Insights capability to look at that. And then finally, the Power Platform Admin Center, as you can see here, allows me basically to get deeper when it comes to Copilot Studio and basically the different types of apps maybe that are associated then with Copilots as an example. So this gives us the ability basically to see those particular metrics and details and then really drive that forward, obviously, in terms of our adoption, consumption, and then usage of these agents as we go through and navigate. As you can see here, the different types of Copilot credits that we interact with. So once again, we have all these great tools to really help you with that particular adventure. All right, let's keep going in the interest of time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into our Copilot and let's go ahead and really rapidly, let me go ahead and flip my screen real quick. Let's go to kind of the full automation perspective with this. So great, Scott. You've shown, for example, I can manage these now. I can actually access Agent 365 and some of these other tools basically to drive the usage metrics, the security and governance that's related to it. I've got Co-work now that I can use to go even further than that, and that'll be another session. But what about full automation? Well, full automation is something that we can also do inside of Copilot, where AI can now interact with your applications. We typically do this with a technology such as MCP, or what's called Model Context Protocol. Basically, look at MCP as a way that an AI agent can do the clicks and click on the buttons and navigate on the scroll bars and all that kind of stuff to take action inside of your particular application. And our team's going to show that and highlight that even more today in Connect, as I know that there is an MCP connection with Anna, John, and a couple of others that are really digging a little bit deeper then as well into that. And I'd recommend to take a quick look at it. But let's look at a quick example of how we can do that right now inside of our environment. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to our screen inside of here. There we go. You should see me here as well. Perfect. Let's go ahead and look at our different types of screens and let's go into our activity here. So this is an example of an agent that does the clicks for us. What happens here? Well, basically, a trigger is detected where we pass an email, or in this example, a record of information, and we tell the agent basically, please go through and then take the data that I have here and then enter this into Dynamics 365, into the ERP application. What does it do? Well, it goes through, it calculates adjustments, so it does some basic mathematical operations to bring it so that the pricing is matched perfectly. It basically goes through and updates that contract, and then from there, what it does is it sends an email with all the different execution steps that it did in order to accomplish that particular goal. Well, how did I instruct it to do what it was doing? Well, pretty easy. Basically, inside of the agent, I said, follow these instructions inside of here to basically accomplish what you need to accomplish. There's not a single line of code that's inside of here. It's all natural language. It says step by step, open the contract, expand the delivery period tab, open the price details dialog, verify what's inside of there, make sure it's saved, put the adjustment in this field, right? So this is what's really spectacular about this. Once again, we are using agents to automate or to use robotic processing automation to basically go through and take data that was presented to it and then update and enter it inside of Dynamics 365. And the possibilities of this are pretty much limitless. Create new customers, create new orders, create new RFQs, to create new purchase orders, attach documents, whatever you want it to do, that's what we have the capability of doing now inside of our environment. So a really cool concept inside of here. All right, let's go ahead and start wrapping up here in the interest of time. So Key takeaways for all of you today. Agents are absolutely transforming how work is done in your organization. If you don't realize that now, what I really recommend you consider is going to your team members and having a conversation with them to see how those agents are really transforming how they are working. Are they using it to look up information? Are they using it to generate emails? But no matter what, they are absolutely transforming how work is being done inside of your organizations. Now, one of the things to note here is that different companies are at different stages of that journey, and that's okay because as you can see, you have all these capabilities, and you can start with maybe just the co-work or the chat experience as an example, and then from there grow into the capabilities of AI. Because once again, it's going to take a little bit of an investment. It's not something that's going to be magically happening immediately. It's going to take some time to do that. Now, the other things to note is that the tooling has really matured into supportable capabilities, as you can see, that every organization can implement. And as these technologies continue to grow in capabilities, expect more disruption. One of the things that I've started to see is that people in the past that were against AI 2 years ago are now using AI for tons of stuff. They've become believers. Some of these have been people that have been the toughest critics of AI. And so I think it's been really cool to see the understanding and adoption of once we start to see more value around it. And as this technology continues to grow, the other thing you need to understand is that change management is really going to be critical to the success of your long-term AI adoption and automation inside of your organization. All right. With that, we are now getting to the end of the session. I want to thank all of you for joining. Have a great rest of your Connect, and we'll see you definitely later as we go through and talk a little bit more in my next session about more AI capabilities inside of really the Microsoft platform. With that, thank you and have a great rest of your Stone Ridge Connect.